I want to tell you the story of the infamous serial killer Lyda Trueblood, also nicknamed as Mrs. Bluebeard. Most of my information was taken from a 1939 newspaper article by Frank Capriana entitled Mrs. Bluebeard, She Always Got Her Man. Lyda Trueblood was born in Keatsville, Missouri in 1892, just 10 miles away from my hometown, Brunswick. She moved with her family to Twin Falls, Idaho in 1912. At the age of 19, she met and married her first victim, Robert Doyley, an Idaho landowner. Later, they had a daughter, Lorraine. As far as anyone could tell, they were a happy family until the first in a series of strange misfortune occurred. Baby Lorraine died. Before the grief of the tragedy faded, Lyda's brother-in-law, Edward Doyley, who lived with Lyda and her husband, also died. Toimaine poisoning, it was said. In 1915, Lyda's husband, Robert Doyley, died. The third death in the household in less than 2 years. The death certificate gave typhoid fever as the cause. Too young to stay single, Lyda moved on. She married William McHaffel of Montana in 1917. He died in 1918. Influenza and diphtheria, said the death certificate. No one to grieve, Lyda heard the call to romance in 1919 and became the bride of Harlan Lewis, an automotive engineer in Billings, Montana. Just 4 months later, Mr. Lewis mysteriously died. The death certificate said gastroenteritis. Once again, Lyda moved on. She went back to Twin Falls, Idaho, where she met up with Edward Meyer, a ranch foreman, in 1920. He fell in love with her right away. "Will you marry me?" he said. Of course, Lyda said yes. Can you believe, less than a month later, Lyda became a widow for the 4th time. The physician who attended her husband gave the cause of death as typhoid fever. Lyda's friends and relatives in Twin Falls said it just didn't seem right that one should suffer so much grief. But to Earl Doyley, a county chemist and a relative of Lyda's first husband, Robert Doyley, it not only didn't seem right, it seemed wrong. Was it the hand of God or the hand of Lyda? Doyley had seen the deceased, Ed Meyer, several days before, standing pale and ill, leaning against the house. Doyley went to Meyer's house and scraped some dirt from the spot where Meyer had stood. Quickly but carefully, he had it analyzed. The results indicated arsenic poisoning. He had a physician and the state chemist check the results. They agreed with his findings. What was her motive? Her husbands had over $20,000 worth of life insurance on them, and Lyda was their beneficiary. The case was made against Lyda, but Lyda was missing. She was caught in Hawaii 8 months later. Yes, you guessed it. She was married to husband number 5. All the suspects' bodies were exhumed. Arsenic was found in most of them and signs to indicate arsenic poisoning in the others. But Lyda was tried for just the murder of Edward Lewis. The jury reached a verdict of second-degree murder, and she was sentenced to the penitentiary in Boise for 10 years to life. This should be the end of the story, but it isn't. 10 years later, she escaped the prison with the help of another man she charmed. She dumped the man after the escape, took off on her own, and was found in Kansas more than a year after her escape. She was married to husband number 6. He said she was a good wife, but she did ask him to take out a life insurance policy, which he had neglected to do. She was taken back to Boise Penitentiary, and eventually she died. She will always be known for Mrs. Bluebeard, who always got her man.